John 10, we're going to start at verse 40 and read through chapter 11, verse 16. As you're turning there, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Greg. I'm the pastor here, one of the 4 pastors here. We have a board of pastors that shepherd this church. Look, I was a little distracted this morning. Didn't get around to most of you to say hi, see how you're doing. I open myself up to you after church to, if you want to chit-chat, just let me know what's going on in your life. If you got questions for me, I will hang out until I talk to all of you who would like to talk to me. John chapter 10, verse 40. What am I doing up here? What is my job, role, purpose? It's to show you Jesus. It's very simple, and yet we've made it so complex. I'm not here to tell you how to defeat this problem in your life or conquer this temptation. I'm here to reveal Jesus to you and to tell you He does all that in and through you. Just to remind you, it's not a marriage conference today. It's not how to kick this addiction. It's not how to fix your finances. The blessing and the incredible thing is as you find Jesus, all these things, they come together. Typically. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes life just stays a wreck, right? Sometimes life is just filled with afflictions and turmoil and trials, even when you found Jesus. Look at Lazarus. The guy stared at the bottom of flowers for 4 days before Jesus came through. Chapter 10, verse 40. He went away again across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing at first, and there he remained. Many came to him, and they said, John did no sign, but everything that John said about this man was true, and many believed in him there. Chapter 11, verse 1. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going to them again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he will not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest and sleep. And Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. Father, John tells us the purpose of the story is for your glory, and your glory is the revelation of your Son and his glory. You're made significant when I see Jesus for who he is. And so that is my hope. And now, I preach with the expectation that that is exactly what will happen, because this is your story recorded in your word for us. Thank you for speaking to us, Father. Anna came along about 5 years into our marriage. Easy pregnancy. I think the conversation went like this. You know how, if you're a young couple, you think about finances, like can we afford a baby, this, that, all the mumbo jumbo that goes on up here that probably shouldn't. And 5 years in, we said, like, maybe we should try to have a baby, and a week later, she was pregnant. Sweet. I didn't know it was that easy, right? Anna came, and 5 months later, pregnant again. Man, this is really easy stuff. We went and got our ultrasound for the second pregnancy and found out that it wasn't going to be a viable pregnancy, and it resulted in a miscarriage. You go through all the questions of why, God. Did we do something wrong? Did we mess something up? Did we sin? And if you've gone through a miscarriage, you know the floods of emotion that can overwhelm a mind as trying to find answers where at times there is no answers. And so that came and went, and for 2.5 years, we tried to get pregnant and left it up to the Lord and nothing. So we talked about fertility drugs. We talked about should we help aid through fertility drugs, and I don't personally care your opinion on it. We left that up to God, and we decided, if God puts a piece on our heart or Becca's heart, we'll move forward with it. And so it was on the table for 6 months. Becca was not at peace about it until January of this year, where she said, I feel like, we can move forward with this. Not because I want to have another baby, but because I feel okay with it. And so she got the prescription for it, and she put it in her purse, waiting for the right timing and all that. You women know what I'm talking about. The right timing never came because she got pregnant. And something my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, has been doing up to this point is praying for a baby sister. And she was praying for maybe a year, to the point of coming into our bedroom and going, I want a baby sister! So, well, leave the bedroom and we can get working on it, And so her prayers actually started changing probably about September prior to January for a baby sister and a baby brother. And we knew taking fertility drugs, the possibility of twins is higher. Like I said, we never needed to take them because we found out we were pregnant, and not with just one, but 2. And we got to experience the blessing of that. The nervousness of twins on the way. And so we went and got an ultrasound and stuff, and everything seemed to be normal, except certain levels were not where they should have been. And we were given, the possibility of this pregnancy not working either. And I remember standing outside of the hospital where we got the ultrasound, and we got in Becca's car, and flooded with emotions again. And I think the conversation went like this: Becca, no matter the result, we will choose right now to worship the Lord. If He blesses us with children or He doesn't. And we made a commitment to ourselves: Jesus all the way. We will see Jesus in this and through this. That is my hope today, is that not after the storm, but before the storm, before the chaos, before the affliction, before the trial. Actually, the right word is temptation. Before the temptation, you will know Jesus is in it because He loves you. You'll know that the Father is in it because He wants one thing greater than you fulfilling some fleshly desire, and that's for you to see His Son and to preserve your life forever. I say temptation. The Lord's Prayer: deliver us from temptation, guide us from evil, this is your kingdom, something. The word temptation. Have you ever scratched your head? It's like, why would God, temptation, He delivers us from temptation. I thought God doesn't tempt us to sin. And the unfortunate part is a misuse of the word temptation as we just peg it to disobedience, to sin of omission or commission, right? Maybe you've heard it boil down to that, which you could toss those words. Because, we've kind of put in a nutshell and limited what sin is and temptation is based upon either our response to God's commandments or our lack of response to God's commandments. And it's so much more than that. Temptation, in fact, 1 Peter 1 talks about various trials, right? And we'll get there here in a little bit, that you may be grieved by various trials. The appropriate word is temptation. The exact same Greek word for the Lord's Prayer, temptation, as in 1 Peter 1:9. I'll put these together here in a little bit. I want you to see Jesus in your temptation to throw yourself at the world and find worldly answers for what God may say, I have no answers for you except my Son. The problem isn't stopping yourself from looking at more pornography or stopping yelling at your spouse or fixing your finances. The problem is seeing Jesus and seeing more of him and more of him and more of him. I mean, Lazarus dies, and Jesus makes sure Lazarus is good and dead before he steps in. Jesus causes a trial or a temptation in the life of Mary and Martha, which you need to come back next week because we finished the story on next week, in order for the glory of his dad, his father, to be revealed to his disciples and that family. Whatever your heaviness and your burden, whatever it's a result of, be it sin, be it relational struggles, be it, you have to fill in your own blank. There's one purpose behind it, it's the glory of God revealing himself through his Son to you. That is the answer, period. I love John. The Gospel of John takes, 21 chapters, John, to get out the Gospel. And then you get to 1 John, where maybe 10, 15 years later he wrote, he's like, man, I could say the same things in 5 chapters. And then you get to 2 John, 3 John, he realizes I could do this in 13 verses, which should be a lesson to a preacher to preach shorter. You know, you could say the same things in shorter amount of times because it's really, at the end of the day, not that complicated. And I understand and I know that the danger of a lot of words is complicating very simple doctrines. God loves you. He sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to die for you. Period. We turn a page in John where now John enters. And today what is Palm Sunday? Actually, the story of Lazarus probably took place just a week before Palm Sunday. Very close to Palm Sunday. John dedicates half his gospel to the last couple weeks of Jesus' life before his crucifixion. It's a big deal. And the story of Lazarus is placed there as a pivotal point. It's one of it's the last miracle that I see in John, unless I'm missing something, that happens before Jesus enters what we call Passion Week, the last 6-7 days of his life. So I want to start in verse 40 of chapter 10 to build a context that John is giving you that is important to know. All these details are really important. Verse 40, he went away again across the Jordan to the place where John the Baptist, John had been baptizing at first, and there he remained. And many came to him and they said, John did no sign, but everything that John said about this man was true. Many believed in him there. Well, John started baptizing in a city called Bethany. Now this gets very confusing because both cities, there's 2 Bethanies in the New Testament. Both of them are at play in the story. So it's easy to get confused at what we're talking about. I want to make the distinction now so you can understand something. Jesus leaves the Jerusalem, Judea area and goes to Bethany across the Jordan. Pull up, you have that map? Pull that map. Okay? So you see the blue line, that's the Jordan. To the right of it is the Bethany beyond the Jordan. This is where John started baptizing. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lives in Bethany, which is 2 miles outside of Jerusalem. 2 different Bethanies we're talking about here, okay? And what I did here, Clark taught me this trick. I wanted to figure out like the distance between the 2. What you don't see on this map is is the key, where it says like an inch equals 40 miles. This is what you can do. This is proven, man. I know exactly the distance between the two Bethanies, and here's how I would do it. So if that key was there at the very bottom, I just like figure out the distance on the key, and I'd shift my hand over to between the two Bethanies. And that red line is about 40 miles according to my key, which isn't on this picture, but is on the other picture. And I just lock my fingers in at about an inch, and I realize, wow, it's about 40 miles, minus maybe a fraction of an inch, maybe 38 miles. And now I get an understanding of how far Jesus walked to get away from Jerusalem. You should try that. It's proven technology. If you got shaky hands, maybe you shouldn't venture down that aisle. But for those of you who are confident in your ability to measure, so Jesus he wanders about 40 miles away from Jerusalem. The context is, right, he just got done being at the temple. They wanted to stone him because he says he's equal with God again and whatnot. And so he goes back to where the story kind of starts, back with John the Baptist at the Jordan. All right, we'll bring up the geography here in a minute again. The story is about love and affliction. The story is about how much God and his son loves this family. And he loves them so much, he allows Lazarus to die. You see, sounds backwards, doesn't it? Well, I thought God was supposed to step in before the tragedy to prevent the tragedy. And Jesus makes sure Lazarus is good and dead before he steps in. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. See, now this is where you're confused, right? This is the other Bethany. The Bethany by Jerusalem, not the Bethany where Jesus is at, the other Bethany. So John is he wants you to know there is about a 40-mile distance between Jesus and Lazarus. The village of Mary and her sister Martha. Go to Luke 10, 38, 39. I want to build up the relationship that took place between Mary, Martha, Lazarus, and Jesus. So Lazarus is the brother of Mary, and Mary is the sister of Martha. We see this played out here in a second, meaning they're all part of the same family. They're all siblings. Luke 10:38. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listened to his teaching. You know how the story goes, right? Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. The Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. And then we use Martha as like don't be like Martha, be like Mary, right? I mean, you need to choose the better things in life. Don't do that to Martha. She had such a huge heart to love on Jesus. She wanted to serve. There's so many different personalities out there. You have the Marys who just sit and gawk. Her bedroom was probably a wreck. Let's just put it like that. She probably did not clean her room. But does that mean she's any better than Martha? No, I bet you Martha's room was completely clean, no dust anywhere all the time. Two different personalities. And Jesus does not say a negative thing about Martha, except builds up Mary. Hey, no, she's chosen something good. You go back to doing what you do. Right? You go back. He doesn't say, stop cooking for me. I love it. He builds Mary up. He builds Martha up. And where's Lazarus? I mean, he's the brother. He's probably pumping weights in the back room or playing video games. But Lazarus is part of the picture. So Jesus builds this relationship with them opening their house to him. This is the intimacy, and they take care of Jesus' needs when he enters this village. He grows very fond of this family. Verse 2, John wants to hammer in the depths of the relationships. So John fast forwards. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. John 12:3, just to kind of give you an idea. So the next week, my guess is the next week or shortly after, during Passion Week, just a few days before Jesus' death, starting at verse 1, chapter 12 of John, verse 1, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus. There again, Mary at the feet of Jesus. Maybe she just likes feet. I don't know. And wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. John wants you to know that these guys, that Jesus and this family was tight. Very tight. Verse 3 of John chapter 11. So the sisters, Mary and Martha, sent a messenger to him saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. Doesn't use the name Lazarus. John wants you to know even more. Lazarus' name did not even need to be mentioned. Jesus knew who was being talked about. That is how much Jesus loved them. He who you love is ill. But when Jesus heard this, he says, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God. Watch the wording here. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Did you catch that? The purpose of this illness was for the glory of God. Jesus is talking about his Father, the Father, so that the Son of God may be glorified in it. Now let's talk real quick about this phrase, Son of God, we did a few weeks ago. Son of God, kind of gives the idea of John referring to the deity of Jesus. When you see the title and the name Son of God in the Bible, it's typically in a fashion or in a manner in which people are trying to resonate, is this dude God? All right, is this man here God? And this is what Jesus is saying. The purpose of this miracle, the purpose of this illness is to prove that God was in man form on the earth, so that his family and the disciples would know Jesus, the man, was God. That is the purpose of this. He says, this illness does not lead to death. Okay, now let's just fast forward the story. Lazarus dies. Jesus says it does not lead to death. Lazarus dies. Now you can quickly formulate an answer to that and say, well, Lazarus spiritually will be alive, or he was raised from the dead. Well, Jesus says it will not lead to death, but it did lead to death. And therefore, I believe what Jesus is saying, that the purpose of this illness leads to life for all who witness it. That for you who believe in the Son of God, you have found life. Verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. This is the fourth time that John has put it in here. He wants you to know this relationship is as tight as it gets in the New Testament. So, and that's a Greek word, so, to me, is the most critical word in this story today. So, when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. I don't want you to miss this, because this directly applies to how God works in your life. Jesus made a cognitive decision to stay put when he heard of the illness of Lazarus. Jesus decided it was best for him to die. If you go back to the 40 miles and you calculate, how long could you walk in a day? 10 miles, 20 miles, I don't know. Either way, Jesus planned to arrive 4 days after his death. And I believe it was the moment, we'll see a little bit later on in John chapter 11, that Jesus knew Lazarus had died. That's when he decided it's time to go. My thought, 4-day journey. 10 miles a day, 4-day journey. Either way, Jesus decides we will wait this out, not show our face until he's dead, until there's no hope. It's easy to why didn't you step in sooner? God, where are you? God, where have you been? You see, questions like that really, guys, are surface questions. And they're distracting questions. And if you can get to a point in life, no, this is my hope, that you see and know Jesus in such a way that those questions don't surface anymore. Those questions can completely disappear to the truth that Jesus loves me regardless. God has a purpose. All things are working out for my good regardless of the results. Jesus, this is the second time Jesus has done this. Go back to Mark 6, 47 through 50. Mark 6, verse 47. The disciples are rowing across the Sea of Galilee during a very intense storm. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. And Jesus saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. Jesus saw with his own eyes his disciples were struggling in the middle of the night out on the sea. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. Thank God, right? Jesus is going to rescue them. No, he meant to pass them by. He meant to pass them by. You ever feel like God's just passing you by? You ever feel like God's just kind of like on standby? Like, I'll get to you when I get to you. But keep reading that story. He meant to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out. For they all saw him and were terrified, but immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." He got in the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves. And John shows us the other side of the story, and they worshiped him in that boat. They knew he was God. I've learned a couple things about being a hero. I'll pass on to you. If you want to be a hero, you've got to show up in the last minute. Paul Revere would not have gone down in the history books if a year before the British were coming, he's like, guys, I think they're planning an attack. They're planning on coming. We should probably put a stop to it. And if they would have reacted to that and, stop British, beforehand. You see, Paul Revere is a much bigger hero because at the last minute, he comes trumping through town. They're just like a mile offshore, guys. We better do something. You see, heroes show up in the last minute. I remember being 6 or 7, and there was smoke pouring out of my neighbor's house. And I went up and I knocked on my friend's door, and I said, "Yeah, I think the house next door is on fire." And then I became a hero because I made it in the newspapers for saving the house and all that. It was pretty sweet, right? Last minute hero stuff, right? The guy who prevents the catastrophe like 5 years beforehand, he's never recognized. I wonder if Jesus kind of taking some hero lessons here, like show up at the last minute. The other thing here, guys, is this. I was in Turkey once. Oh, when you're a hero, acknowledge you're a hero. Real heroes just say, "Yeah, I saved that dude's life." That was me. See, I was in Turkey once, and we were at a river bank that was about 150 feet wide, maybe twice as wide as this room. And it had rapids, but, being part of a mission group, all the people my age wanted to jump in and swim across and jump off a cliff on the other side. Problem is you had to swim across the river. That was, you got white caps on it, and about a mile down was the ocean. And so they're all jumping in, swimming across, and I decided I'd stand on the shore in case someone decided to jump in that shouldn't have jumped in. And sure enough, a lady walked up, and I sized her up, thinking to myself, I won't tell her no, but we both might die here in a second. And she had this confidence about her, and she jumped in. And about halfway in, she realized, yeah, that's a bad mistake, and she went belly up. She's just like, I'll just float. That's what I am good at. And she just takes off downriver. And I'm like, okay, this is the moment. I have a life preserver in my hand tied to a rope, and I throw it at her, and I completely missed. Completely missed. I mean, like miles off. So I jump in, and I'm thinking to myself, man, if I die, Oh, I'm taking her down with me. And guys, so I catch up to her like a half a mile downstream, and like I wheel her over to the side. I saved her life. If I wasn't there, she would be dead. And you're like, man, this is really arrogant of you. I was a hero. But I pulled her aside, and she just floated, so she just walked away. I about passed out on the side of the bank. No one came to help me. But I walked around that corner, like expecting high fives from the team because I saved one of their lives. No one recognized me. So I went down in the books. No one only telling you I'm a hero, hoping you believe me. You see, here's what heroes do. They show up at the last minute, and they save the day. And Jesus, look, Jesus, he says it. Look, this is for my glory. I need you to know something. I am the only hero. I am the only one who can rescue your life. I'm going to prove it by showing not up at the last minute, but 4 days late. I'm going to rescue his life and rescue your life in the process. This is what, Jesus, he has no qualms at saying, this is for my glory because my glory is the Father's glory. This story is about revealing the true hero. Jesus Christ in your life. He will rescue your life from death. The disciples said, verse 8. Actually, let me back up to verse 6. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer, the place he was. And after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. Right? Let's cross the river, go back towards Jerusalem. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you. So this shows you how tight the context is from John chapter 10. They were just seeking to kill you. And you're going there again. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. If anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. This is where I see the humanity of Jesus come out. What does that have to do with anything, Jesus? We just said, don't go to Judea, you're going to be killed. He says, well, if you have a flashlight, you won't trip over a root. That's what he says, right? He says, hey, guys, the disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you. You're going there again. Jesus said, are there not 12 hours in the day? Check your watch. If you walk in the day, you do not stumble because you see the light of this world. If you walk in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. For a moment in the New Testament, I see Jesus distracted. I see him like squirrel. I see his humanity come out. It seems like he's disconnected. And I'm going to give him this because I feel as if he is in agony because his friend, the one he loves, is dying. He's not affected by this. Jesus has real emotions, which we will see here next week. His buddy, his friend, the one he loves, is on the edge of death. And he knows for the sake of his disciples and his family that he has to hang out a little bit longer and let him die. So I feel like there's a little bit of disconnection between Jesus and his disciples, but it does make sense. 1 John 2:10. This is where Jesus can be, I feel like he can be distracted and yet still hammer in some incredible truths about the gospel. 1 John 2:10. Whoever loves his brother. Now, this is where I think John, he rehashes a lot of stuff in 1 John that he said in the gospel. I think he has an epiphany maybe 10 years later what Jesus was saying, and he puts it out in a much shorter form. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. Verse 11, but whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he is going because the darkness has blinded his eyes. So there's a part of Jesus saying, look, I love Lazarus so much, I don't care about my life. We will go, despite the fact I die or not. And then there's another element here. Jesus is telling these guys on a practical standpoint, guys, if we go during the day, they're not going to jump us. Let's just walk during the 12 hours there's daylight. and they won't jump out of the bushes and tackle us. If we walk by night, we're setting ourselves up. So let's utilize the 12 hours we have in a day to get there when we start heading there. That is my interpretation of those verses and what Jesus is saying. After saying these things, he said to them, verse 11, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he meant taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly. This is where I feel like the words of Jesus reveal he's hurting inside. He doesn't beat around the bush with these guys anymore. He just, look, Lazarus is dead. Lazarus has died. I thought he said that it doesn't lead to death. Not for his disciples. It leads to life. Lazarus has died. And for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there. Because if I was there, he would not have died. For your sake, you need to see what's going to happen in order for it to be so fresh on your mind that when you see me on a cross and 3 days later come up out of a grave and people are going to tell you that wasn't me, you're going to know without a shadow of a doubt that life is found in me. He says, "Let us go." Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go that we may die with him." That's how grave the situation was. They knew this is the last trip. Someone was going to be in a casket. I love that. Thomas, he gets ratted on a lot, but he's just willing to die with Jesus. We're not going to leave him, and we're not going to abandon him. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 1. Verse 6. Peter says to his readers, "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. In this you rejoice, comma," and he brings up a kind of a different idea. Not that you're rejoicing in your trials, but in what he's about to say. But he brings up this idea of trials. "In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been grieved by various trials." Now, real quick, we're going to break down 3 of these words: grieved, various, and trials. The word grieved literally means heaviness, burden, to be cast into sorrow. In this you rejoice, even if it's necessary for a little while, you've been cast into sorrow by various trials. Various, Greek word, literally means a bunch of different colors. All different shapes, sizes, and forms of trials. Now, again, I know Peter's talking to a group of Christians who were looking at suffering under Nero and persecution, but I don't believe for a second you can limit this to simply government persecution, because that word various. He opens the door wide open. Anything that throws you into sorrow. Trials. This is the only time that I saw in the New Testament that Greek word was translated trials. Everywhere else, it's translated temptation. I wonder, were the editors just a little bit nervous of the word temptation because of the connotation that it has acquired over the years? Temptation is anything outside of the realm of God's glory. Temptation is not just so limited down to, like, I was tempted to sin. Well, I'm not tempted to sin, but I was tempted to steal. And we've sliced the pie so incredibly small that we forget that anything outside of God is not God and is not what is good for us. Our goal is Jesus Christ, period. And anything outside of Jesus can become a trial. It can cast you into sorrow. This world doesn't bring life, it brings sorrow and death. I wrestled over the idea, can I throw sin into this category? As in, sin as we know it, right? Disobedience to God's word. That's, as we have defined it in modern Christianity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Does Peter say, well, it's only sorrow that is indirectly tied to you because someone committed a grievance against you? He says, even though you're grieved by various trials. And he doesn't define it. And so you may suffer because you are making bad decisions that you seemingly cannot stop making because you have cast yourself into a pool of sorrow by listening to your flesh. In this you can rejoice. We move on to tie this together. If necessary, you have been grieved by various trials so that the tested genuineness of your faith. My goal this morning is to pray to God that you see Jesus Christ before the temptation ever occurs, before the trial ever occurs, so that the tested genuineness of your faith. Look, Greg, you can't say faith and sin at the same time. You really don't have sin and faith. Peter is saying here the tested genuineness of your faith. What is faith? Faith is in believing in Jesus Christ as Son of God. That is the essence of faith, and that's more precious, that Peter says, than gold that is refined by fire. That is faith. Faith is not the outcome of your behavior. Faith is not the ability to do or not to do. You see, and we've boiled problems down to simply being stopping our disobedience or enabling more obedience. If I could stop being greedy, if I could stop lying, if I could stop cheating on my taxes or cheating on my wife or beating my dog, then I will have more faith. No, you guys, that is so backwards. And it's on the edge of false teaching. Jesus Christ is the only one who brings new life and a new nature and who enables you to be more like him. Romans 8:28, all things work out to the good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. The next verse, who have been predestined. Hold on. See, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. Who have been predestined. I know the word foreknows in there. I don't know if it's before or after predestined. Predestined to be conformed to the image of God's only Son, Jesus Christ, who have been foreknown, justified, will be glorified. That's like 87% accurate. And I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now because of that. I know it's in Romans. The point is Jesus is doing a work in you. You ain't doing that work. You can't do that work. And Jesus proves it by letting Lazarus die. He says, you need me even 4 days after death. I don't know the season you're in right now. I don't. It's so easy to give up on God because he showed up too late, or he never showed up. You know, he might show up 400 years after your death on this earth to redeem this world. By then, I think you already know it was for your good. You know, Peter goes on and says, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, that is your conviction, your persuasion that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in the praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So let's go back to verse 6. In this you rejoice, so that in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Though you have not seen him, guys, this is directly written to you. This is for you. Though you have not seen Jesus Christ, you love him. Though you do not now see him, you believe in him and rejoice with joy that is inexpressible and filled with glory, obtaining the outcome of your persuasion that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the salvation of your souls. In this you rejoice. What? The revelation of Jesus Christ in your life. Guys, I plead with you, I encourage you to get to a point where you can say, no matter the outcome, we will choose to worship the Lord. We will choose to see Jesus. Because, guys, Becca is currently finishing her second miscarriage. And she is strong as a rock because she knew at day one Jesus Christ was in this. Despite the outcome, despite what may benefit or not benefit us, despite the family. You know something? I have to sit with Anna at night. I don't have to, but I get to, but I want to, and I have to because she tells me to. At night, and I cuddle her, and I rub her back. You know something? If you got young kids, I just encourage this. We have our cuddle time as we go down to bed. And it's talk about whatever you want, both of us. 2 nights ago, we're laying there, and she goes, Daddy. I say, Anna, do you want to pray? I'll always ask, do you want to pray? If she says no, we don't pray. Right? I mean, kind of backwards, wrong? No. She, at 4 years old, will choose how she wants to relate to God. And if she chooses not to pray, that's great. She's honest. And I will not force her to pray to God if she's not ready. She wanted to talk about something else. She goes, Daddy, why isn't Jesus No, hold on. She goes, this is how she started. She goes, Daddy, when I get my baby sister, that's mine. Then my baby brother will be yours. And I said, that seems pretty rational. I mean, that's kind of cool. She goes, but why isn't Jesus giving me my baby sister or you your baby brother? I said, I don't know. I said, what you can do is just talk to him and ask him yourself. That's all I got for you. Your affliction, your trial, your temptation, your weakness in this life, that is your flesh, it is designed to reveal Jesus, the light of the world, in your darkness. I can honestly say myself, with the recent news of our miscarriage, of what we came to love as twins for a brief moment in our life, I can tell you with 100% certainty, it is well with my soul. I'm okay. Even though me and my wife may be grieved for a small time in our life, we will rejoice at the revelation of Jesus Christ in our life because of our affliction. Heavenly Father, I lift this church up to you. My story is not to elevate myself. It's to say you are our anchor. Your Son, your Son Jesus Christ is the goal, is the ambition, is the passion of my heart for this church. Because I've tasted and known that he is good, that he is a good shepherd. I wish I knew the stories, Father, behind the faces here. I wish I knew exactly how you were working so that I could say, it's coming. Jesus is coming. But I can say this, Father. I can say, I know you love them. And the storm, the affliction, the temptation, it is for your glory at the revealing of your Son, Jesus Christ, in their life, that they may come to know that you are a good, good Father. We are just days before your Son hanging on a cross. He went to Lazarus even though he knew he was going to die. That's how much he loved Lazarus, and that's how much he loves us. Father, thank you. And I pray for those specifically in this room this morning that say, yes, I want it to be well with my soul, but it's not. That's just the reality. It's not. And I think you tell them it's okay. I'm not going to stop being your God and your Father, and my love for you is not going to stop. Be with them this morning. I asked Wally and Gene if they would come forward. Be willing to pray with you if you've got these struggles, these temptations you're going through. You see, some of you, you've been through this. You have lost children to death. You have filed bankruptcy. You have faced the shadows of death yourself. You have lost children to the ways of this world. The various trials are very real to you. Your story is much like mine. And I have seen Jesus. And I can tell you, I can tell you He is the answer. Set it all aside. There's nothing more you can pursue to fix what is going on except to run to Jesus. Let these people pray for you if you're open.